Ladies and gentlemen, all Paul friends welcoming you to Starfleet Universe on Call. And tonight it's just me, which is weird because Barry said he was going to be here. But anyhow, since it's just moi, well, actually Dave's here, and I'm assuming Chris and the gang are probably be showing up on Twitch in any moment now. So welcome everybody, and welcome if you're just tuning in now to this wonderful podcast. The more the merrier. Hey, Iggy. And tonight we're going to be going over some more SFB rules because that's one thing I've started on this journey through the SFB rules. Now, obviously, this is more of an overview of the rules and not actually going in detail for everyone. And actually, some of those, Iggy, if you fell asleep on the couch, you needed to sleep, so no problem there. But yeah, when it comes to the rules, is ideas give a general overview because I really never talked about them. Yes, I've actually talked about the FedCom rules. I've talked about the Starfleet, the Starmada rules. Never talked about this B rules, so that hurt. So that's why I wanted to go through this. So anyhow, it looks like Barry actually is here. Hey, Barry.
Hey there, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Down in Nashville.
Oh, cool.
Fly home tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Short weekend. Fly home tomorrow, get home Saturday. And then fly back down here Sunday.
Wow, that's nuts. You're gonna be home for like one day and then gone.
Yeah. Well, technically, although I arrive at my house at about 3 in the morning on Saturday and I leave Sunday night, so it's over 24 hours.
Yep. Still, it's not as nice as having 2 full days,
Yeah, but it was better than just spending the weekend down here with nothing to do.
True. That is true.
And since my company is paying for the trip, it's like, might as well.
Get some more of those wonderful miles on with that.
Well, let me tell you, my next vacation in May, 2 first-class tickets to Cancun from Philly for free on points.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, just a reminder to you and everyone out there, in 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks, not the next, there will be no podcast. I'm going to be on vacation.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm going down to Virginia, near the Shenandoah Park, down there. So we got an Airbnb down there. We'll probably spend some days in the park. I'm not exactly sure what other plans we are, but we'll probably find some local restaurants or something like that and go out to eat a few times. Probably do what we normally do. What we did last Airbnb we stayed at is that we had breakfast at the house. And then had like dinner out, and I think we also had, depending upon, the day, we either had dinner in or out. Lunch in or out. So
right.
Hopefully,
Well, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get some hikes in, and also see what else is around there. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, hiking is awesome.
Yep. Both my Theta and I, we both got walking poles to help us.
Oh, cool.
For stabilization and so forth, so we don't fall on our faces.
Oh, yeah.
And don't have to worry about nearly as much about. Yep. Oh yeah.
People with those, they're that's an awesome idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself.
Oh, I will. I will. This reminds me of there's a YouTube person I follow. Eva za something I forget. She goes venturing to different places and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things she actually did was walking up this long trail, and she had poles with her. So that's why they remind me of her.
Ah.
You know, like I said, she's on her.
Well, I'm not doing much.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that basically the one thing that's happening with her at the moment is that she sent her, her was it Overland? I think it's Overland. Basically her SUV from Europe and sent it to Mexico. So she's going to be doing traveling, like I'm assuming, up and down North America and South America for the next 1 or 2 years. So that should be
cool.
that should be interesting to see how that all turns out. Actually, the funny part is that I saw one of the posts on when she announced that this is what she would that she was sending her SUV across the pond, and putting it in a ship and sending it across. And that is that one of the posts said, you really, what you need to go, you're probably going to need to do is actually replace the back windows with either at least tinted windows so people can't see in, or metal windows, basically, because people will be more than happy to break into your SUV and steal stuff. Then this is guys from experience from driving in like Mexico. I think he drove from Mexico down to Colombia. Is what this guy did. So,
that is so sad.
Oh, I know. I agree. I agree. Well, we'll just have to wait and see. See what she does, and if she decides to reinforce things when she she actually arrives in Mexico or not. Because I know she didn't do that before she left, and obviously she didn't see the post before we got on the ship and got shipped out. So I'd like to see how that all turns out.
Yeah. That's yeah.
Yeah, because
so this is someone you listen to, or
yes,
someone you actually know.
No, someone I just follow on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I look at her and go, not me. It's not me, but it's nice because she would do something that I would never ever do, which is driving around all these places. Not actually. Well, she kind of plans it to a certain degree where she's going, but she does all this traveling and lives in her little SUV. And it's like, no, that's not my kind of living is doing that. Though there's another person I follow, Nikki, I forget her last name, and she basically lives in a Prius with her dog, and she drives around. She's got a job and all. She works temp. She had all these kind of temp jobs that she can work using the computer, and of course, also gets supported by Patreon and other things on YouTube too. The supporter, but she goes around. And I couldn't live in my car. Though.
Yeah, it'd be a bit extreme. I can live in a hotel, but I can't live in a car.
Yeah, I can live. Actually, the one thing I have thought about, and I think it'd be really cool to do, especially given my job situation, which is my job at this point. I'm 100% remote. 100% remote.
Yeah.
So in theory, I could get into like an RV or get a nice trailer, haul it around the United States, and maybe find a place to park it. Like every single weekend, you'll go to the next site or stay to a certain site for like a month or whatever, and then move on to the next location. Because as long as I have access to the internet then I'm good. You know?
Yeah. Well, here's a bizarre one. Someone who can afford to live anywhere in the world is Elon Musk,
Mm-hmm.
and his house is what's known as a boxable. Have you heard of boxables?
No, I've not.
Boxable is a company that makes houses that fold up. You can tow it with like a pickup truck,
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes like a tiny house, a fairly large tiny house, but a tiny house nevertheless. And Elon Musk said, you know what? I'm going to live in one of these. That'll be my house.
Why not?
All he needs.
Yep. Yep. Just the location to park it, then you can go anywhere you want. You know?
Yeah.
So, oh, holy cow.
So,
Hold on.
who's here?
Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Hey guys, how are things? Happy St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, happy St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. Got to be St. Patrick's Day. We're at Kennel Club this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also known as the Celtic Cluster.
There.
So how are you doing?
So, not too bad. I called in a couple of weeks ago, but I missed your call in last week, Barry. So I guess it's the first time in a while that we've both been on at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what have you been up to?
Well, not a lot. I mean, just wishing Steve Patrick and Jean and everyone well in terms of all the stuff that's been going on lately, and hoping that things improve. You know, I was talking to Paul a few weeks ago about the new Steam Deck in terms of the clients.
Oh, yeah.
I was listening to your guys talking about Omega last week and stuff. But yeah, I didn't know if you guys had any plans for a topic or not.
I had a plan for one, but if there's another topic that you want to bring up, I'm more than happy to put it to the side.
Well, I'm trying to remember. Paul, did you say that you do have a copy of both Captain's Log 50 and 52 in around somewhere, or no?
Yes, I do have it. Right now it's downstairs. But yeah, I do.
54 as well.
Yeah, I have most of the Captain's Logs. Some of the older ones I don't have anymore.
Yeah, because just to kind of follow on from the Omega discussion from last time, I was just curious as to whether you'd had a chance to check out any of the playtest material from those books.
To be honest, no. I think I might have looked at them, but I really haven't had a chance to play them.
Because I don't know if it's the kind of thing that either of you would like to. I guess the two of you guys get a chance to arrange in-person games during the year.
Yep.
I don't know if either of the empires that are up for playtest would interest you guys or not.
Remind me which ones those are.
So, Captain's Log 54 includes a collection of 4 anti-proton variants for the Bravians of Omega.
Ah.
So either the Trians or the Warps.
They use the same anti-proton weapons as the Warp, yeah, and as the Umatrians.
And what?
And this is for FedCom, right?
It's the Paravians.
The Paravians.
Yeah, because in the Omega timeline, the Paravians that are in Omega, they discovered the Umatrian homeworld in the Y206, and then after that, they start digging up samples of anti-proton technology and reverse engineering it for their own ships.
Wow. Why 206?
There's
Is
a lot.
that what you said?
Yeah, Y26.
There's a
Wow.
lot of.
Because the Omega timeline
echo.
goes as far as Y221.
Okay, that's not the same as um, Y 206 in the alpha, right? Or is it considered the same?
Yeah, because the the technology advances. But okay, so getting to the quote unquote middle years happens earlier in Omega, but getting out of it again takes later. So, for example, most empires only get speed 30 cruisers starting in the Y170s.
Right.
And most of those haven't been printed yet. And the earliest war class ships, like war cruisers, war destroyers, they only show up in Y187, and they haven't been printed yet either. And the first X technology ships don't appear until Y198, and guess what? They haven't been printed either. So
Jeez.
they're still like relatively late in the timeline, and you'd see quote unquote modern like non-X ships still quite prominent at that time, because especially after trying to rebuild after all the damage that's done by the Andromedans in the Soldier. So the Parabians getting access to the anti-proton technology is part of that. And so in Captain's Log 54, there's a set of 4 SSDs, playtest ones, basically showing Parabian ships with the anti-proton systems, like for people to try out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're SFB rules.
Yes, SFB rules. Yeah.
Okay.
And SSDs.
Mm-hmm.
And also, in Captain's Log 50 and 52, there are rules and SSDs for the Zosman Marauders, the main pirates of Omega.
Right, right.
And they actually have ships on shapeways. And also,
Mm-hmm.
the Parabians, okay, so the Parabians from Module C6 have some ships on shapeways. And not coincidentally, the anti-proton variants are based on those ships. So if people want to go out and get the miniatures for the Parabians, then they're welcome to pretend that the same miniature represents its anti-proton variant as well.
Interesting.
Because I think we've spoken about both the Parabians and the Zosman Marauders in the past, but I don't know if you had your Captain's Log with you at the time, Paul. But also, if Barry hasn't been able to see the new stuff for himself, then I guess if you guys get a chance to meet up this year, then maybe that might be a good time to, try them out, either against each other or against the Andromedans, or maybe just against, other Omega empires, just to see how these ships work out.
Well, next time I visit you, Paul, if you want to show me what you've got, I could take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Huh. That's weird to me. I'm looking at the Zosman, and they remind me a lot of the Mezeron.
Oh.
Well, when it comes to the
Osmonds.
shape of the ships, let me just double check that, because I brought it up on Shapeways and went, man, that reminds me of, yeah. It's akin to, it's not the same, obviously, but this same kind of boxy shape.
Well, the main thing about these guys is the stealth field, because
Right.
I'm not too sure how the stealth field would work in a tournament setting. That's the only thing, because the stealth field is designed to work in like regular SFB. So, for example, if you're using things like passive fire control or tactical intelligence, that sort of things, because when the stealth field is running, both the Zosman ship itself and the ship it's fighting both have to act as if they're under passive fire control. And also, when the stealth field is running, the level, you can't see the ship until you reach a certain tactical intelligence level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, you have to be only so far away from it before you can actually detect that it's there. So, because that kind of factors into their ability to basically sneak around the octant without being disturbed, whatever.
Right,
But,
right.
at a tactical level, that might be tricky, because in a tournament level, even like a cloaking device or anything like that doesn't really I mean, you still know that the ship is there. It's just that you know, it manifests in a different way because like in I guess in SFE or FedCon, you can cloak indefinitely, but I don't think that's true in the tournament. So I don't know whether there needs to be some sort of equivalent thing for stealth field. Well, I mean, there's probably a way to disqualify the player for doing that, but yeah. So yeah, just kind of, and also there's the whole idea of the optional weapons because similar to pirates in other regions of the universe, the Zosmans have modular weapons and phasers. So in theory, you could mix and match whatever type you like, but in practice, there aren't a lot of weapon mounts per ship class. So it's generally, each ship is generally designed like, oh, I guess it's best to kind of stick with one type of system at a time and focus on that. And also to give you a comparison, in Captain's Log 52, there's an update file that includes more historical data in terms of, how they work, and also what weapons are available to them. And in their home space, when they're defending it, say, against the Andromedans or Soldier or whatever, they actually use Misron. The standardized weapons that they use are Misron types. So that's why angle phasers, tachyon guns, and tachyon missiles. So for example, the Zosman Heavy Cruiser, it's got enough room for 6 phasers, 3 on either side, hemispheric, and it's also got the 2 weapon mounts, the 2 weapon modules on the front. So that's enough room for 4 heavy weapons, and you can pay extra to give them front hemisphere arcs instead of FA arcs as well. But then there's a few other things, like there's lots of boarding parties, there's lots of shuttles, as you can imagine. They can take FRA shuttle bombs, but they can't take as many as the FRA can. So you've got a few advantages in terms of like using shuttle bombs instead of using regular shuttles, so that sort of thing. So there's 2 little kind of like, pluses and minuses. I guess it's like, I'm trying to think of an example because the Ryans aren't a good example because the engine doubling, because the Zosmans don't have engine doubling, they just have like regular engine output. But yeah, basically, I suppose if you ever did an LMC campaign and you had the Jumakian, ship in that, you wouldn't expect the ship to have the same option mounts as like a Neen or Panify, but it would. You have to see whether it's compensated in other ways. So.
Yeah. Remind me, I'm pretty sure I remember this correctly, but when it comes to the shuttle bombs, weren't they originally created by the FRA? Or am I remembering?
That's correct. Yeah. So basically, the Zosman steal examples of them. They reverse engineer them, but only to a limited extent. So, because the FRA themselves, they refine the shuttle bomb technology. So, for example, when they first deploy them, you can replace a single admin with 2 shuttle bombs, but then they miniaturize them, and so you can replace an admin shuttle with 3 shuttle bombs. But the Zosmans never figured that bit out, so the Zosmans were only able to replace 1 admin shuttle for 2 shuttle bombs. And so it's actually, by the way, the Belasco get limited access to shuttle bombs too because the FRA sell them, some of them to them. So if there was ever to be a Belasco tournament cruiser, then that'd be a question: are they allowed to take a limited number of shuttle bombs themselves?
That was the Belasco, you said?
Yeah. So basically, the FRA have an agreement with the Belasco. Yeah.
Yeah, the Belasco traders, they were big into tractor technology, if I remember correctly.
That's exactly right. And a lot of their technology is unique, so the Zosmans can't use it. So anything like but also the two factions, like historically, have a large grievance. So Belasco versus Zosman would be a very common historical battle. So like how well it would work out in game terms is like, I guess that's hopefully what playtesting would determine. But
yeah, well, they would be, certainly one are the traders and the other ones are the pirates that are attacking them, or traditionally attacking them, or raiding them, I should say.
Yeah, one of the things that what surprised me with the Zosmans is that I was confusing the Zosmans with the old Galaxy Pirates, which are totally different ship designs.
Oh yeah, those are the guys with the the oversized wings on the port side
Right.
that they can use to dock with freighters and carry them off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was a miniature ship race for that too. It's quite big actually. Like it's big enough so that you can actually fit a freighter underneath it, I suppose.
Oh wow.
But,
Come on. Segway's a little slow. Wow. Look at the Trian. Trian. Is that how you pronounce that? Trian? Starts with a Y? Ymatrian?
Yeah, they use the antiprotons and
Right.
phasers and the antiproton beams and the antiproton lances.
Like, they look kind of neat overall. The battle axe, I'm looking at that going, you know, that reminds me a lot of the Drex, because it has the little like pyramids at the
Firing arcs are so narrow.
No, I'm looking at the shapeways, because the battle axe has these kind of triangles at the front of the ship for each of the what were those things called? Pylons. And that reminds me of Drex. I'm pretty sure the Drex has the same. Is it the Drex has all the same thing? Or am I thinking of something else?
well, there are direct miniatures on shapeways as well, if you want to compare them.
Okay, so it wasn't Drex. Oh, it was. What's the one with dark energy? The dark energy.
Oh, the Soldier.
Ah, I think that's what I'm thinking of. I think about the Soldier, not the Drex. I'll bring up the Soldier real quick for those watching the video. Come on, I did click that, right? Let's try that again. Oh, there it goes. Must have missed it. No, they're little spiky things. Okay, I must just confused them. Okay. Tells you how often I actually look at the Omega ships. But yeah, I think that'd be cool. You know, next time we get together, maybe play test some of that stuff. You know, whether it's, you know, when you stop by the house or when we get together at Harrisburg. I forget.
Either one will work.
Yeah, I know the normal place we've been getting together for games of winter and games of summer. They are currently
going away.
Yeah. So you heard about that?
Yeah. I talk to Doug frequently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he posted up on Facebook, so that's how I found out. So it's like, oh,
yeah.
So he's
I call him. About once a week or so.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me, I got to give my brother.
I had something bizarre happen.
What's that? What
happened to me? So Sunday I was traveling down to Nashville, and I ran into my daughter at the airport.
Small world.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mean the one that lives in Seattle, I think it is, or Washington at least?
No, the one that lives in Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was using an airport I don't normally use. I was using Dulles, but she doesn't normally travel for business.
Mm-hmm. But
she was that day, and it was just like, hey. That doesn't happen these days that much.
Oh, a great.
That was kind of cool.
Oh, understood. Yeah. I probably won't be seeing my brothers until July, which will be normal July 4th party that we have every year.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's nice to get together. I'll be there. I'm not sure if my wife or I don't think my daughter will be. I think she just prefer to. Groups really stress her out and drain her. Becomes energy wise, you know.
Oh.
So she's not good for that. But anyway, yeah, that'd be cool when we get together to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't play ASL on SFU Online. Chris is just talking to Iggy about getting together this Saturday. But anyhow, yeah, actually, I brought one. I did not realize they had it, which is the Karis. Same which has the Karis. Yeah, the Karis. Remember? Do you remember the C4 races? Or sorry, Empire. Sorry, Gene.
Yeah, I vaguely.
Shark Hunters, the Karis, the what's the ones for the ISC? They're simulator race.
That's the Barbarians, I think.
Barbarians, yes, thank you. I can
There's
picture
also
this.
a number of flagships on there, I think.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to barbarians, I could picture the ships because they're very ordinary and plain. Big surprise because of they're just simulator races that the IC used to simulate the barbarians at the door. You know, the Romulans and the Gorns and the Federation and all of them. You know. Yeah, and of course the interesting part about the Karis was that, of course, they were basically tanks. It's Iraqi spelled backwards. Iraq spelled backwards. I think that was the whole idea of it. What's the whole idea of having a turret is interesting, and it's not just the Kari. Who was it? Who's another one that actually has a turret weapon?
There are several races with turrets. The Warb has them.
Yeah, I think there
were a few others that.
I think it's the Warb I was thinking of. I'm bringing that up right now.
Turrets.
So
Okay.
there's the Warb, yes, and then also the Borak.
Yes, the Borak.
And the Imperium in Triangulum Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one thing that they don't have. I don't think they have any of the ships from the Triangulum Galaxy. Actually, no. That's what I'm thinking of. LMC is what I'm thinking of. Is because obviously the Triangulum that's still a long way off from actually, it's still in playtest. It has been in playtest for a long time. I'm not sure that will ever be completed. Just like the Tholian, the old Galaxy Tholians, and the information about that and the different empires there, which that I'm not sure where that is, because I think originally was set up to be for Prime Directive. And then they were going to build off of that. At least that's my remembrance. It's been many a year since I actually talked. I even heard about the Tholians. And when it comes to going back to the old galaxy, you know, and the whole history of the Tholians back in the old galaxy, which I'm sure, just like me, I'm interested. I'm sure Gary's interested in too. I think Gary and I talked about it a bit in the past.
Yeah, because the home galaxy is M81, and there's a discussion thread on the BBS to try to basically figure out like what an M81 module would look like in terms of what new empires would be needed, and how they would all fit together and stuff. And I think there's like a couple of things, like for example, any of the enforcer species that existed before the Sultorians,
Right.
just use Sultorian ships, so there's no point in giving them, because basically the idea would be that the Thorians would basically keep the blueprints on file, and then every time a current enforcer species rebels, then they'd crush them, and then they'd uplift some other species and say, all right, these are the ships you're using, and then they know what to expect when the next rebellion happens. But at least until the whole Webreaker thing came out.
Right.
But the main difference for MRD1 would be you'd probably need at least 3, because there's we were also talking about this in the past, but there was an article in Captain's Log before talking about this thing called the Great Martial War, which is basically kind of like one of the massive big wars of conquest that took place. And in that war, there were 3 major empires that the Tholians fought. And one of them, the guys who are the originators of the pirate. So, as we mentioned, the pirate ships have those big wings. So
Right.
the ones without the same empire would build ships without those wings, and they would be the regular Navy ships. So, and also, supposedly those guys would have unique technology that allows them an advantage when they're fighting inside a nebula. So if you think about how the Kixer have an advantage when they're fighting in the Kixabler cloud,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like equivalent to that, but nebula terrain instead of Kixabler. Speedo is never get fully conquered, because even if they're swept from open space, they can hide on those nebulae, and the Tholians, their enforcers, would have a tough time trying to get in and get them out, because, as you know, web doesn't really work, except for, I think the only function that works in a web, in a nebula rather, web casting, it's under the very limits, that restrictions that direct fire weapons have in a nebula.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be actually quite difficult for the Tholians to get in there and, sort them out.
Right.
So, but if we don't know what that technology looks like either. So, but that would be pretty interesting, though. I mean, just try to give the old like balance the campaign so that they can win, but it's not a given to them. Like,
Right.
however, they had to really earn it, or that if they're playing it, say, at like a Federation Empire level or something, that the other guys have a chance of winning, even if it's like a 40-60 chance.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. As we talked about before, I'd be interested in that. At the moment, at the life of ADB, well, more importantly, the designer and the current crew, not so sure if that's ever going to come to fruition,
Well, for what it's worth, one of the reasons why the conversation actually picked up again is because in the Tholian Master Starship book, and also in the recent module R4T, there's actually a significant section that's basically kind of like a background info for the home galaxy Tholians in terms of like what ships they use, how you can deploy them, what do you call them, auxiliary units they use, both that the Tholians themselves use and that their subject species use.
Right.
So that you can basically begin the process of, figuring out how the home galaxy will work in that sense. Like, basically, this is like the first time, I should say, that level of detail was ever given. So now I don't know if there's ever going to be a Sultorian Master Starship book, but if there was, then in theory, one could basically see a similar section given for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you've done that, you're moving things further along to the point where you could actually sit down and think very seriously in terms of like, all right, well, how can you actually take these building blocks and turn them into something that people would want to play?
Right. Well, the tough part is background. In my mind, the background of the empires is probably easier to do than actually fleshing out rules and weapons and ships that are related to those empires. Because that's when you
thing is that you wouldn't need to worry.
Because at the same time, especially for subject races, if you want to have something that's in before they become subject races, you have the whole issue of the LMC problem all over again. And the problem with the LMC, when Ken Burnside created those empires for the LMC, he had the one of the most difficult problems that you can ever have, and that is you have to create empires that are strong enough to fight each other's, and they're relatively strong, ships, but they have to be able to be defeated by the Andromedans without any improvements and so forth. So there has to be, because obviously the Andromedans invade the LMC and take over. And there's not much of the original empires left. They're running it. They're hiding for the most part. And so the ships have to be weak enough that they can't really fend off the Andromedans. So that, to me, that is a difficult position to be put in.
Well, individually the ships might be strong. That's another possibility, is just have ships that individually are strong, but they just didn't have the production to crank out the numbers so they could get swarmed over by the Andromedans. It's like, okay, I've got my cruiser's better than your cruiser. Yeah, but you're facing a Dominator.
That is true, but at the same time,
they do have rules. No.
Yeah, well, I was going to say is that, but the thing is, the Andromedans, there weren't a large fleet. If you think about it, the Andromedans didn't have a really huge fleet when they were fighting. Their big advantage was their strategic advantage of the RTN, where they could, obviously, satellite ships were, for the most part, throwaway to a certain degree. They had the most of the whole thing. The motherships were not as disposable, and so those have to survive, and and you have to be able to almost defeat the other empires using those ships. And when we don't have,
just limited the number of. If the Federation has 50, 60 cruisers for their empire with 10 dreadnoughts and the what are the bugs, the LCS LMC bugs, what are they called again?
Magadium.
If the Magadium had 2 or 3 cruisers for their whole empire, well, it doesn't matter how good those cruisers are. Even if they're just as powerful as a Fed cruiser, but the Fed has 50, 60 cruisers to their 2 or 3, the Andromedans can walk over them.
Well, there are rules in SFE Module C5 that, for example, in a standard scenario, after you've selected your flagship, you can only select one size class 3 ship for every 3 size class 4 ships in the LMC. So that's cruiser, frigate, cruiser, destroyer. And also, it's noted that when it comes to operational speed, because we'll have to see what FNE and Andro War says about this, but generally speaking, Andromedan ships, even if they're faster on the RTN than other empires, they're slower than a modern ship like a Federation CA or Klingon D7. They can go about 6 hexes a turn in operational movement in SFB in spent empire terms. But whatever speed the Andromedans go, when they're not on the RTN, is slower than that. Now, because hasn't been said how much lower, but whatever it is. But it does say in Module C5 that the LMC empires are themselves, their ships are no faster than the Andromedans off the RTN.
Mm-hmm.
So that basically means that the Andros have a relatively larger advantage strategically against the LMC empires than they do against in the Alpha or Omega.
Mm-hmm. So the Andros are not, your RTN is not as critical for them. Or in specific, if the Andromedans are off the RTN and they run into a bigger fleet, they have the possibility of, oh crap, run away and get away.
And also, it says that there are more historical examples when they don't need to worry about the 2 DizDev limit. They could just switch off the DizDev and mass forces together because they don't have to worry about being outrun by the Magellanic empires. So.
Right, because the limitation on the DizDev are the use of the DizDevs, really.
Right.
Of course, you'd still have the tactical limit of the DizDev in terms of like you can't use more than 2, like to display ships and stuff. But as I say, in terms of just switching off the DizDevs on the additional ships or on the previous ones, you can you have more leeway than you would in other parts of space. But to get back to M81, the thing with the Tholians is though is that when you think about it, if they can take a fleet of 12 ships and they can take 2 battleships and they've all got webcasters, you know, there's not a lot you can. If you have an equal number of ships and if you don't have web breakers, then that in itself is a challenge. So the trick would be, I mean, it's less of a like it would be basically in a straight up fight, it would be a challenge to come up with an empire that could stand up against that. But you know, at the operational or strategic level, maybe there are other ways. Like maybe there's just bigger numbers on the side of their enemies, so that yes, if the Tholians can afford to pick their battles, then they have the advantage. But if their enemies and try to work around that, or try to basically concentrate more forces together or something, then they can, or make it so that they're attacking on so many different fronts that the Tholians don't have the luxury of massing their own forces, and so they really get the campaign going. Like if you've only got so many Tholian ships and you've got so many different hexes or provinces that you have to try to cover, then maybe the enemy guys they can try to basically put pressure in that sense. So I don't know.
Yeah, and as
of course, that's actually that was.
I was just going to point out one thing about the Andromedan. There was an article in Capsule number 49 called "A Bridge Between Galaxies," which is very interesting. At least that's what the chat room is mentioning about them. And I have to I think I've read that article. I just have to go back and revisit it to see what that article was truly about. Dave just mentioned that it explains the RTN. Yes, Gary.
Well, it gives theories in terms of like how the RTN was built, so there's different different empires have different ideas. But the thing is that there hasn't been much in the way of direct evidence to kind of prove like which is one way or the other. So.
Right. It's hard to pick up the pieces after they've been destroyed, basically. And when there's no evidence of it beforehand. Them actually setting up the networks.
The Andromedans have a super RTN to get from Andromeda to the LMC.
Yeah, that's what the intergalactic trunk line is.
Right.
So, although actually, I personally think, now of course, I don't have any ADP level insight on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if because the whole idea is when it comes to galaxies in the SFU is that they have energy barriers.
Right.
So the Milky Way has a strong energy barrier, and that kind of messed things up for the Tholians and the Blosco. But then also, M81 apparently has a barrier, but it's relatively weak, which is why the Tholians didn't think much of our barrier until it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if maybe the Andromedan barrier, because Andromeda is such a big galaxy, maybe their barrier is actually as strong or stronger than our barrier. So maybe the Andromedans didn't actually send the invasion from their home galaxy directly. Maybe what they did is that they picked off one of Andromeda's satellite galaxies and then used that to launch the invasion of the LMC.
Hey guys, I have a really early wake up, so I need to get to sleep.
Okay. Yeah. Good night, Barry.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Good night.
Have a night.
Yep. Yeah, which is always interesting, because the question is, by the time the Andromedans invade the LMC, where have they gone in the universe? Did they directly go from it's your supposition, your theory going, which is there's a kind of a satellite galaxy, a smaller galaxy near the Andromedan galaxy that they invaded first and used that as a jumping off point, or were there other galaxies that they had invaded and successfully taken over in the universe? Or of course, in some cases, I would think that in some cases they had failed.
Well, I'm hoping that if we ever do see more of Triangulum, that the Andromedans do an invasion there. But that would have to be figuring that out too, because the thing is that, if you open up Wikipedia and look up the local group of galaxies, both the Milky Way and Andromeda have plenty of satellite galaxies that we from Earth can see and decide. So you can basically pick off one and say, all right, well, that one is used by the Andromedans and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that so far as we know, Triangulum, at least from our perspective here,
right,
in the Milky Way, we can't see whether or not Triangulum has a satellite galaxy. So it has a bunch of like smaller little kind of globular clusters that are orbiting us, and we don't know what's on the far side of Triangulum from us. But you'd have to basically try to figure out the logistics behind what the Andromedans will do. But then on the flip side, because Triangulum is a smaller galaxy than either Milky Way or Andromeda, it could be that if they have a galactic barrier, then it's weaker as well, so that maybe the Andromedans would feel confident enough to, land on it directly. But so there's lots of things to kind of figure out. Because I think the other thing is that I think that one of the big issues for the Andromedas would be that they're very keen on reconning a location before they commit.
right.
So, think how long it took for them to build up in the Milky Way before the invasion started. And even in the LMC, they waited until their main starbase was built before they kicked things off.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if they do basically avoid direct connections to other galaxies, other major galaxies rather, without first, thinking of the stepping stones to get there.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up the whole idea of the Andromedans are very careful about their scouting. That just brings up a question in my mind overall, which is, of course, the Zerkalians, because the Zerkalians were part are in another section of our galaxy. If the Andromedans had planned on first taking over the LMC and then invading the Milky Way, my question is, did they take into account the Zerkalians, or were they just going to leave them by themselves? Or did they even know about the Zerkalians?
Well, I think that it might be too much pressure, but in FNE terms, to put the entire galaxy's invasion in the LMC, because even between Alpha and Omega, that's just like their full-time occupations, basically. Just basically trying to keep enough supplies of ships and material going to manage those invasions. I don't know whether or not it would make sense to basically say that any other parts of the galaxy were from that. So I wonder if it might be better to have a look at another satellite galaxy of the Milky Way and say that the Andromedans sent a separate trunk line to that place, and then maybe if it's further on the opposite side of the galaxy, maybe they use that to go after Sigma or the Circadians or whatever.
Right, right. They might have had their butt kicked at that point. Because my understanding is that Circadians are very powerful. You know, that's why we need basically second generation X ships just to be able to defeat them. You know, of course, they might have just been just like the alpha octant, which is slowly built up over time. You know, their technology. You know, and of course, the Andromedans was it Y160 is when they first were seen. I have that right?
Y166.
Okay, 1166. Okay, so that's like middle years for the alpha. If I'm getting that right.
They were just in the process of beginning refits and stuff, so it was like transitionally basically between the end of the Four Powers War and the beginning of the General War.
Right, and and they were still kind of. See, that's always the question, and that is, okay. It brings up the other question, which is, of course, that okay, they sent in the original invasion force. You know, that's what we saw in Y166. Started seeing them in Y166. You know, and those were still kind of scouting out to a certain degree. At least that's what I'm imagining. You know, because but by that time they already built the trunk to the LMC. So do they first build the trunk and then send out scouts and invade, or do they, do they have scout ships that first go to another galaxy, investigate, and then they build the trunk, which of course takes. I'm not sure how long it would take to actually build a trunk from the Andromedan galaxy to the LMC. You know?
Well, so they first show up in the LMC in Y138, and the theory, I guess, based on the trunk line article is that they've been building. So part of the thing as well is that the Alpha Empires, they're basically kind of figuring out or trying to, work out how Andromedan logistics work on the fly. So even up to Operation Unity, there was no real understanding about how the trunk line, like whether the trunk line would be any different to regular RTN link. So in other words, does it use regular satellite bases or not?
Right.
And if it does, how many do you need to stretch all the way to Andromeda? So according to the info in CL49, they got there, they destroyed the second and third desecrators, and they realized that it did something. It was a major change. Basically, it kind of like, it cut the flow, but then the question was, well, what was that flow? So they sent ships they pointed ships towards Andromeda and sent them off to take a year's worth of travel, and they didn't find anything. So then the theories basically started changing in terms of like, okay, well, look, if the current satellite bases that we know of didn't work, then what would work? So then you got the question of, well, maybe the trunk line bases are like a specific type that are customized for, like, okay, say if you're in a country like South Korea or Japan, and you've got your subway and local transit lines, and then also you've got like your old style trains and stuff. But then you've got like the high speed rail, like the KTX or Shinkansen, and you really need to basically have dedicated tracks to run those. So you can't. I mean, I guess, okay, maybe a better comparison would be because in Japan there's that new maglev line that they're trying to build between Osaka and Tokyo.
Right.
And it has to have an entirely new network, and because the maglev trains can't run on regular tracks, they have to be on specific maglev tracks.
Right.
Because they're basically floating over the track. So, in that sense, if you think about it, basically there might well be some sort of thing that's about the ICL or the trunk line for the Andromedans that is incompatible with the regular RTN. So maybe the theory would be that instead of having it 1 year apart, maybe the bases are 20 years apart, or 10 years, or 13, or whatever distance the Andromedan engineers, because even they would have to have engineering limits, I think. They're not just magic murder. So they would basically have to work with. So, so I mean, without giving too much away from the article, basically the idea is that the feds think that there's a new kind of mothership called an installer, which we haven't seen yet, which is only designed to place trunk line bases. And their theory would be that they basically have a buddy system where like one would travel 20 years, stop, activate the station, and then the second one would follow up. That will basically go from there another 20 years and set its station. And so there would be faster travel from up to the terminus point that you've built,
Right.
but not as fast as it would be when you get the starbase built at the far end. So, then the Klingons apparently think that there's a ship called the Roadbed class, they call, which basically travels for 20 years and then stops and becomes the station. So, but whatever these bases are like, they're most likely too weak to stand any kind of attack. So that might be a reason why they didn't build one adjacent to the MC, because it was too vulnerable. So instead, maybe the last leg of the journey, they sent the first motherships into the MC on the slow boat route. And so they basically kind of drip fed them the last leg of the journey until there was enough of them and enough resources to build the first separator. And then once the network fully activated with Starbase up and running, then they could start pouring in enough more units and stuff. But I mean, again, like, until more is basically revealed on that, which may never happen because, there's always that element of what's going on with the Andros.
Right. Agreed.
For sure, if that's actually really what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally agree, because no one even knows what Andromeda looks like, but to be honest about that, about the Andromedans, my theory has always been that Andromedans are either robots themselves or the ships themselves are actually Andromedans, basically. They're completely electronic intelligence.
Well, it has been said that they're very interested in the tracks, and there was one time where they tried to install a computer virus on the Drex ship to take it over, but it didn't really stick. It drove the Drex ship berserk, but they weren't able to override its programming.
Right.
So, it's a theory. I mean, I think it's probably I think it's good that they'll probably never say which one it is, because that's the one empire where that's okay for. So,
right. Agreed. That is agreed. That's a mystery that will never be revealed. And to be honest, I don't think anyone wants it to be revealed. It's always that kind of quirky thing that you always are wondering about, curious about, thinking about, it's always one of those things left up in the air, and you can have long discussion on what the Andromedans, what their final goal was. Why are they doing what they're doing? What do they look like? There's so many questions. And I think people like it that way, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, just one final thing I wanted to suggest as well is now we don't have a lot of info, even though, as I said, there is some Freudian preview stuff in Captain's Log 54. It's still, there's no update file quite yet in terms of like explaining how the Praevians got there.
Mm-hmm.
So officially, it's not 100% confirmed that they would use the same like phasers and quantum ray torpedoes before, like that they would have used in Module C6.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I personally would prefer it be the case, but until it's officially confirmed, then we'll have to wait and see. But in any event, I do still think that even with that major caveat in mind, I do think that in terms of basically playtesting Omega ships, I do think that even if only just to see how it works,
Mm-hmm.
I do think that having a look at some of the Praevian ships in Module C6, at least the middle years ones like heavy cruiser, light cruiser and stuff,
Right.
I think it would be interesting to see how they pan out against Omega, equivalent ships. So almost, because I mean, if it turns out that that actually will happen, then I guess that's great. And if not, then at least it's hopefully not an entire waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because I think one thing as well is that if I recall correctly, and I can't remember when this was said, or if I'm pretty sure it was said somewhere, but if I recall correctly, you know how like certain phasers have a different ratio against plasma.
Right. And I know Barry's always complained about that when it comes to the Andromeda, when it comes to the Omegas.
Yeah. So actually, the reverse is true for the LMC empires because their warp-tuned lasers are weaker against plasma. But if I recall correctly, there's no ratio adjustment for quantum wave torpedoes because they're not plasma torpedoes. I mean, they follow certain plasma rules, but I believe they're different enough. If I'm mistaken, my apologies, but I believe they're different enough so that doesn't happen.
Right.
So if you are like taking a ship like a Colligar ship, or if you're taking a Zosman ship that's using Colligar weapons,
Mm-hmm.
then you wouldn't necessarily have the same advantage against the Praevians that you would against quote-unquote plasma empires.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Interesting. Oh, and also when it comes to my theory about the Andromedans, one thing that actually Dave pointed out in the chat room is that the Soldra can't drain life from the Andromedans, which tells me they don't have, in my mind, they're not a biological life force. So,
or they could be so alien that even the Soldra are not compatible with their form of life, whatever it is.
That is possible, but I still think they're completely a electronic, life form. Because I'm assuming the Soldier can drain life force from the Tholians, which are very different when it comes to life. They're rock based, basically.
Well, more crystalline, but yes, the Soldier can feed on Tholians.
Mm-hmm. So.
And the Trobrun as well, the silicon-based does in Omega. Oh, actually, that reminds me, because you were talking last week about the context that Omega phasers are in.
Mm-hmm.
I would point out that historically, those phasers are used in an electronic warfare environment. So when you have wide-angle phasers, sure, the phaser chart table doesn't look great, but bear in mind that if you have a shift, then the idea behind the wide-angle phaser is that it retains a portion of its strength, even if you're dealing with a negative shift.
Right.
Whereas other phaser types maybe have more difficulty in that sense. So I guess there is a method to the madness.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like when it comes to things like radiation phasers, Trojan ships have much fewer phasers than other empires to counteract the fact that they've got such heavy weapons. And again, same thing with the Zosman Marauder. So if you have a Zosman Explorer in space, you don't have, your ship's only going to have so many radiation phases to work with. So yes, as you were saying, the phases themselves might be useful, but how many of them you actually have to use is another story.
Yep, agreed. Actually, going back to the soldiers just for a moment, and that is, I was just thinking about, what about the Brantheon? You know, the dragon empire. Do they have anything special for them?
Okay, so
Because they're a living creature.
I think the main thing is that yeah, so they can feed on living creatures. It's just that there's something about the way it works, because yes, when you're attacking a Brantheon ship, the damage is divided between the dragon part and the exoskeleton part.
Right.
So it's like, I can't remember if it's like a faster damage when you're absorbing the exoskeleton. I can't remember how. I don't have the goal in front of me.
Right.
But I do remember that for comparison's sake, if you have like the Sigurians, they can't infect the dragon, but they can assimilate or infect the crew. So if you're able to get on board and take over the crew, then basically the ship becomes yours. The dragon ship becomes yours anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But the soldier, I mean, I guess you'd have to double check in the Omega Master rulebook, but there is a specific set of interactions that they have with both them and the Alunda as well. But I just couldn't tell you what they were right now.
Understood. Okay. Well, things are starting to get a little late around here, so I think we will close with that thought. Gary, it was wonderful to have you. You know, don't be a stranger.
Thank you. And once again, happy Patrick's Day to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Have a happy Patrick's Day for what's left of it. Okay. See ya. Okay. So, we got into this little discussion there about Omegas and the Andromedans. Lord knows I cannot help myself when it comes to Andromedans. We'll talk about them. I could talk about them to the to the end of time itself, you know, because there's so many things you can discuss about them and different ideas about them, different theories about, you know, how they think, you know, and so forth. And of course, I've need to go downstairs and go grab my captain's logs and read up on those playtest rules so that I can play them with Barry and explain them, obviously, and explain them to Barry because that's kind of important. You know, make some copies of the ships and so forth. I've got a nice printer here, and it also acts as a copying machine. You know, one of those all-in-ones, and that'll work great. So, anyhow, with that, I am Paul Franz, and I bid you a good night.